What do you do when you're the one everyone leans on and you have nowhere to lean? What do you do when the pressure keeps building, but you're not allowed to break? No one teaches you how to stay strong when the business fails, when your partner leaves, when your kids stop looking at you the same, when the silence at 2 a.m. is louder than your own heartbeat. They just tell you, be a man. Don't complain. Push through. But how do you push through when you're drowning with your eyes open? You smile. You perform. You nod when people say, you're doing great. But inside, you're collapsing, and you can't afford to show it. Because if you fall, everything else does too. And here's the truth, no one says out loud, strength isn't natural. It's built. And most men don't build it until life gives them no other choice. That's why this video exists. Not to motivate, not to inspire, but to give you something no one gave us, a strategy for staying unbreakable when life won't let up. Whether it's betrayal, burnout, death, divorce, financial ruin. This isn't about if life will test you. It's about what you do when it does. So, if you're watching this because something collapsed, because your hands are still bleeding from holding too much for too long, stay with me. And before we go deeper, drop something real in the comments. What's one situation that nearly broke you, but you made it through? Not just for you, but for the next man who's reading, the one who needs to know he's not the only one rebuilding in silence. This isn't a speech. It's a system, built for men who don't get second chances, who don't have safety nets, who don't have time to fall apart. This is how you stay strong in any situation. Starting now, you're still here, still breathing, still standing, still wondering if it's too late. But it's not, because strength doesn't begin when you're comfortable. It begins when you're broken and refuse to stay that way. So don't skip this next part. This is where your story begins with the collapse no one saw coming. When no one notices you're dying inside. You never think the floor will disappear until it does. One day, you're holding it all together. The job, the relationship, the family, the identity you've spent years building like a fortress. Then something shifts. Maybe it's a betrayal. Maybe it's a phone call that changes everything. Or maybe it's slower than that. A silence that grows louder. A distance you didn't want to admit. And then it all breaks at once. The people you trusted, gone. The title you wore like armor, meaningless now. The routine you clung to for stability, crushed. And suddenly, you're no longer the man you used to be, but not yet someone new. This is the moment no one prepares you for. Not your mentors, not your parents, not your motivational podcasts. Because nothing can teach you how it feels when the world keeps spinning. But you're the one standing in wreckage. You still go to work. You still show up. But inside, you're on fire. And no one sees it. You laugh when they joke. You nod when they speak. But your eyes feel heavier than your body. Sleep becomes a place you fear, not a place you rest. You stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering how the hell everything unraveled so fast. And worst of all, there's no one to blame. Not really. Because maybe you did see the cracks. Maybe you ignored the signs. Maybe you were too busy being strong for everyone else to realize you were slowly collapsing on the inside. This is what most men never talk about. The moment after the impact, when the noise stops, but the ringing doesn't. When your hands still move, but your purpose feels numb. When you realize strength isn't about being untouched, it's about being broken and still breathing. Marcus Aurelius said, "Disaster is virtue's opportunity." And in that moment, you won't feel virtuous. You'll feel lost, weak, ashamed. You'll feel like the world has forgotten you. But this is the proving ground. This is the place where boys crumble and men begin. Not because you know what to do, but because you refuse to disappear. You might not have a plan yet. You might not have energy. Hell, you might not even have hope. But if you still have breath, if you still have that quiet whisper saying, "Don't give up," then there's something still alive in you. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be put together. You just need to stay standing. Even if your knees are shaking, even if your heart is bleeding, even if everything inside you is screaming to run. Because here's the truth, they never teach us as men. You become strong by walking through the fire, not by avoiding it. And the collapse, as brutal as it is, might just be the first honest moment of your entire life. Not because you're failing, but because you're finally facing what's real, and real is where strength begins. If you've ever felt this kind of silent collapse comment, "still standing," it's not just a phrase. It's proof you're still here. Your pain is talking, you just stopped listening. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It doesn't feel like rest. It feels like abandonment. At first, you don't notice it. You're too busy surviving the aftermath. You're still reeling from the blow, still collecting the pieces, still pretending everything's fine. You're distracted. You're moving. And then, one day, everything is quiet. The phone doesn't ring. The texts stop coming. The doors that once swung open with ease now stay shut. People who once checked in suddenly vanish. Even the ones who promised they'd be there when it got hard, especially them. And now, it's just you. You stare at your phone like maybe the signal's weak, maybe something glitched. But deep down, you know it didn't. They just stopped showing up. And in their silence, another kind of pain sets in, not loud, not violent, just hollow. You walk around your apartment and it feels bigger than before. Not because the space changed, but because the echoes are louder, the footsteps are lonelier. Even the furniture feels like it's watching you try to pretend like this is normal. And the hardest part, you begin to believe it's your fault. You wonder, did I ask for too much? Was I too honest? Too heavy to hold? Maybe they saw something in me I didn't. Or worse, maybe they saw nothing at all. This is the chapter no one writes about. The one after the heartbreak, after the failure, after the funeral, when everyone else moves on, but you're still here, stuck between who you were and who you're supposed to become. It's not just the silence of others. It's the silence inside yourself that's hardest to bear. You used to have a voice that guided you, told you what to do, where to go, who to be. But now, even that voice is quiet. You try to speak to yourself, but the words don't feel real. You try to pray, but the sky feels deaf. You try to scream, but nothing comes out. And in that terrifying stillness, a question forms. If no one needs me, and I don't even recognize myself, who am I? But brother, this silence, it's not punishment. It's not exile. It's initiation. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Withdraw into yourself. It is in the inner man that dwells the spirit." No, that means what feels like rejection might be redirection. What feels like being left alone might be the first moment you're truly with yourself. You see, most men spend their lives surrounded by noise, validation, applause, expectations, distractions. They perform, they hustle, they please, and in that constant chaos, they forget the sound of their own soul. But now there's nothing left to distract you, no one left to impress, no stage to stand on, just you. And that's exactly where the rebuilding begins. Not when someone else sees your worth, but when you do. In this silence, you'll start to hear something again, not outside, but within. A quiete voice, a slower rhythm, a truth that isn't loud, but steady. You'll hear the sound of your own breathing and realize you're still here. You'll hear the silence of a morning with no agenda and realize you're still free. You'll hear the quiet judgment fade and realize you're still worthy. It won't happen all at once. You might sit in this stillness for weeks. You might feel like you're unraveling, but what's really happening is refinement. The silence isn't here to destroy you. It's here to strip everything falsetto, that only the unshakable parts remain. And when that day comes, when the voice returns, when the clarity hits, when you finally feel grounded again, you'll realize something. You didn't just survive the silence. You became stronger because of it. Who you really are when no one's watching. There comes a point in every man's life when the noise fades, the masks drop, and there's nothing left to do but face the one person he's avoided, Most himself. You don't need a priest for this. You don't need a therapist or a support group. All you need is a mirror, and the courage to stand there longer than is comfortable. Because when the people leave, when the performance ends, when no one is clapping or judging or watching, you're finally left alone with the one man who never stops following you, the one in the glass. You look, and at first, it's just a face, tired eyes, unshaven jaw, lines that weren't there a year ago. But if you stare long enough, if you don't look away, something deeper emerges. You see the decisions you made, the lies you told yourself, the promises you broke, the potential you've wasted, not with anger, not with guilt, but with honesty. And maybe for the first time in years, you ask the question you've been afraid to voice. What have I become? This moment? It's sacred. It's not weakness. It's not self-pity. It's the beginning of power. Because until you face your own reflection without flinching, you'll never know what kind of man you truly are. You can lie to the world. You can fake smiles and post wins and say all the right things. But you can't lie to your own soul. It remembers everything. Every time you gave up too soon. Every time you stayed silent when you should have spoken. Every time you said, "I'm fine," when you were drowning. And yet, this moment isn't just about seeing your failures. It's about seeing that you're still here. You're still standing. Even if bent, even if broken, even if barely breathing, you're still here. And that matters more than perfection ever did. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, said, "The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself." He wasn't talking about achievement. He was talking about alignment, about bringing your outer life into sync with your inner truth, about becoming a man who doesn't perform strength but embodies it, quietly, relentlessly. And that starts here, in this mirror, with this version of you, not the man you want to be 5 years from now, not the man you think you were before the fall, but this Mantha, one who's been through hell, who's lost things no one will ever understand, who wakes up in silence and still chooses to breathe. This is the raw material of strength, not sculpted in public, but forged in private. And once you accept him, truly accept him, without excuses, without self-loathing, without fantasy, something strange happens. You stop needing to be liked. You stop needing to prove. You stop waiting for permission. And you start reclaiming your standards. You say no more often. You let go of what isn't aligned. You begin to lead not others, but yourself. Because you've stared into your own emptiness and didn't run. This isn't about becoming someone new. This is about returning to who you were before the world told you to be someone else. Before they asked you to shrink, to please, to disappear. The mirror doesn't lie. And that's its gift. Because when you can look at yourself and say, I know what I've done. I know what I've lost. I know what I'm still capable of. You no longer need to chase strength. You are strength, defined not by muscles or money or medals, but by the man who refused to look away when everything inside screamed to turn his head. So if you're in this place right now, staring at the version of you that you barely recognize, know this: you're not broken. You're just being introduced to your real self. And that man, he doesn't run. No one's coming, so you choose you. You think the worst part is over once the collapse ends, once the noise fades, once the mirror is faced. But that's where most men get it wrong, because what comes next is the real war. Not outside, not in courtrooms or hospital rooms or office meetings, but in your own head, in your chest, in the silent battlefield that no one sees. It begins quietly. A thought, a whisper, a memory. You messed everything up, and you'll never be enough. And they were right about you. End 4. You brush it off at first. Shake your head. Try to distract yourself. Go for a walk. Scroll your phone. Watch something loud and numbing. But the thoughts always find a way back, especially at night, because the mind is relentless, and when it senses weakness, when you're tired, alone, unguarded, it sends its sharpest weapons: regret, guilt, shame. It shows you every mistake you've made, every opportunity you missed, every person you lost, and suddenly, you're not just living in the present, you're reliving everything. The arguments, the betrayals, the moments you stayed quiet when you should have fought, the times you let your fear decide who you became. You try to silence it, but that only makes it louder. You try to fight it, but it knows every soft spot. You try to ignore it, but it camps in the dark, waiting. This is the inner war no one claps for. No one sees. No one gives you medals for surviving. But it's the war that defines you, because if you can't win in here, you'll lose out there. Cicero once said, "A bad feeling is a commotion of the mind repugnant to reason and against nature." End of term. What he meant was simple. Just because a thought feels real doesn't mean it is. Just because guilt is loud doesn't mean it's truth. Just because you feel broken doesn't mean you are. The inner war is fought in moments, split seconds. The flash between "I can't do this" and "but I will." The breath between "I'm nothing" and "I'm still here." No, most men lose because they let their thoughts command them. But the strong, they lead their thoughts. They step outside themselves and observe. Not to run, but to redirect. You are not your shame. You are not your trauma. You are not the version of yourself that you were forced to become to survive. You are the one who gets to decide what happens next. But that decision isn't made once. It's made over and over every morning when you don't want to get up. Every night when you feel worthless. Every time your past calls out like a ghost and dares you to believe it's your future. And here's the truth that might save you. You don't need to feel strong to act strong. You don't need to be healed to take the next step. You just need to know this battle isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. Every time you breathe through the storm, instead of collapsing, you win. Every time you answer the thought with reason instead of panic, you win. Every time you sit with the pain without letting it define you, you win. And those wins, they're invisible at first. But over time, they stack. They solidify. They harden your character like steel in fire. The world will never celebrate your inner war. But one day your calm, your clarity, your quiet power will be so undeniable that people will think you were born strong. They won't know what you had to fight through to become unshakable. But you will. So the next time the voices rise, the shame creeps in. The doubt presses its weight on your chest. Don't run. Don't break. Stand your ground. Because this war, this is where strength is earned. If this is the moment you decided quietly to choose yourself again, right, it starts today. There's a point where numbness becomes unbearable. Not because it hurts, but because it doesn't. You stop feeling anger. You stop chasing hope. You just exist in a kind of gray that no one talks about. You get through your day. You smile when expected. You respond with, "I'm good," even though nothing about your life feels good. You survive. But you're not living. You're drifting. And then one morning, no different from the last, you sit in the stillness. There's no epiphany, no breakdown, just a quiet confrontation. And you whisper something, barely audible, maybe only to yourself. "I'm done living like this. Endo." That's it. No music, no thunder, no applause. But something irreversible happens in that moment. You stop waiting for circumstances to change. You stop hoping that someone will come back. You stop looking to the past for answers. Instead, you look forward, and for the first time in a long time, you take ownership, not of what broke you, but of what comes next. Because pain wasn't your choice, but staying broken, that is. And now you choose differently. You don't declare war. You don't map out some grand reinvention. You do something simpler, more dangereux, more powerful. You decide to get up, to act, even when it doesn't feel like it will matter, even when no one else is watching. Especially then, you throw out the trash. You fix the damn bed. You write one line in that journal you forgot about. You do 20 push-ups, not because it will change your life, but because you refuse to stay still. And something shifts. You stop performing for others. You stop auditioning for love. You stop outsourcing your strength. You reclaim it, inch by inch. In silence, Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly." That includes you. You are not a moment. You are not a comeback tweet. You are not someone's temporary approval. You are a construction site. Man under rebuild. And that process starts with one daily vote for the man you're becoming. You won't feel like it. No one ever does. You'll doubt it. You'll want to quit. You'll hear the voice that says, "You're wasting your time," but you do it anyway, because for once, you're not living based on how you feel. You're living based on who you are becoming. And that decision, that daily defiance, it changes the shape of your soul. You don't need clarity. You need movement. You don't need confidence. You need commitment. You don't need to be understood. You need to be honest with yourself about what you've tolerated, what you've neglected, and what you're no longer willing to carry forward. You stop negotiating with your weakness. You stop defending your stagnation. You stop blaming your pain. Not because it wasn't real, but because it no longer gets to rule you. You reclaim your schedule, your standards, your silence. You become a man whose presence no longer depends on applause, whose peace no longer depends on people, whose direction no longer depends on permission. Because the truth is, no one's going to hand you your power back. You take it back one decision at a time. You won't post about it. You won't need to. People will feel the shift. Not in your words, but in your stillness, in your discipline, in your refusal to be pulled back into who you used to be. From this point forward, every step is yours. No matter how small, no matter how slow, you are no longer living by default. You're leading yourself through fog, through fear, through failure. That is the mark of a man who is truly strong. Not the one who talks about it, the one who decides. Daily, quiet, relentless. This is how men rise. This part won't look like a movie. There's no montage, no dramatic transformation, just mornings that come too early, nights that come too late, and hours in between where everything feels like a grind. That's how the rebuild begins, not with fire, but with friction. You wake up tired. You don't feel ready, but you get up anyway. You don't need motivation anymore. You need momentum, because you've already made the decision. Now, you're building the man who made it. The process is slow. And that's the point. Strength that comes fast doesn't last. You're not chasing a high. You're not performing for applause. You're laying bricks, quietly, consistently, day after day after day. You create order. Maybe for the first time in years, you stop saying, "I'll see how I feel." You stop waiting for inspiration. You set a time. You show up. You train when you're tired. You read when you'd rather scroll. You write when your thoughts are a mess. You keep promise, especially the ones no one knows about, because those are the ones that shape your spine. It's not glamorous. No one claps. But that's what makes it real. Epictetus said, "Progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily." So that's what you do. You don't try to become better overnight. You become structured, deliberate. You build your mornings like rituals. You carve time for thinking, for moving, for sharpening, not because it's trendy, but because it's survival. You reclaim control from chaos own breath. One rep, one page at a time. You simplify. You focus. You cut the noise. The endless debates, the drama, the excuses. You become a man with fewer distractions and stronger convictions. You don't have time to argue. You don't have space for doubt. You're too busy rebuilding what the world tried to break, and not in a rush. In rhythm, you stop chasing people who left. You stop proving yourself to people who don't matter. You stop apologizing for your standards. The rebuild is where you remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And it's not just physical, it's internal. You strengthen your word. If you say, you'll do it, you do it. You sharpen your presence. People begin to feel something different around you. Not because you say more, but because you need less. You no longer beg for understanding. You radiate command. Your body starts changing. Your energy shifts. Not because of hacks or shortcuts, but because of discipline. Because you're no longer negotiating with your weakness. You track your progress, but not just with numbers. With peace. With clarity. With how quickly you return to center when life throws fire at your doorstep. That's the rebuild. Not just lifting more, earning more, looking better, but becoming a man who is unshakable under pressure. The rebuild will test you. You'll want to quit. Some days you will slip. But that doesn't undo the foundation. You don't throw the house away because a window cracked. You patch it. You move on. That's the difference now. You don't spiral. You reset. You are no longer a man seeking to be rescued. You are a man who wakes up and rescues himself. And over time, without fanfare, you rise. Not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. You walk into rooms differently. You speak less. But when you do it lands, you make fewer promises. But you keep all of them. You no longer need to convince the world you've changed. Because the man you've become makes that announcement for you without saying a word. This is the rebuild, where the pieces of your collapse become the architecture of your strength, where the silence becomes your sanctuary, where the grind becomes your gift, where the discipline becomes your freedom. And one morning, you'll wake up, same gray sky, same cold coffee, but you'll realize something feels different. You're not pretending anymore. You're back. And this time, you're built to stay. Unshaken, unapologetic, unbreakable. You won't notice it at first. It doesn't arrive like a trumpet. It doesn't feel like a climax. It feels calm. One morning, you wake up and you don't dread the day. You don't check your phone to feel worthy. You don't scan the room for permission to speak, to lead, to exist. You just breathe. Solid, steady, grounded. Not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. That's what strength really is. Not louder, not faster, but clearer. You walk differently now. Not with arrogance, but with alignment. You no longer move to escape something. You move because your direction is yours. You no longer need to prove who you are to anyone. The man who used to chase validation now walks with self-command earned, not given. People notice. They can't explain it. Something in your eyes. The way you listen more than you speak. The way you don't flinch under pressure. You've become anchored. Not because you found peace, but because you built it. The old triggers no longer pull you. The noise no longer owns you. The storms still come. But they don't shake your foundation. Because now you don't react. You respond. You don't collapse. You calculate. You don't avoid pain. You absorb it and turn it into power. And in that strength, there is stillness. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. The impediment to action advances action." Oh, what broke you, built you? What delayed you, trained you? What silenced you, sharpened you? And now, Here you are, not just standing, but rising, with a clarity forged in fire, with a purpose that doesn't depend on applause, with a rhythm that doesn't rush. You lead differently now. From example, not ego. You speak less, but every word carries weight. You don't ask to be respected. You live in a way that makes it impossible not to be. This isn't about becoming someone else. This is about becoming someone true. The man who walked through collapse, who sat in the silence, who faced the mirror, who fought the war, who made the decision, who rebuilt without fanfare. And now, Heri says, not above others, but above who he used to be. Not with revenge, but with reverence. Not to dominate the world, but to master himself. This is what they don't tell you, that the real rise doesn't come with a spotlight. It comes with peace, with stillness, with the quiet knowing that you are no longer breakable. So, if you've been in the fire, if you've fallen, if you've lost, if you've suffered, remember this: your rise will not be explosive. It will be unshakable. The silent plan that changed everything. Somewhere out there, there's a man sitting in the dark. No one calls. No one checks in. He thinks he's weak because he's silent. He thinks he's broken because he feels alone. But he's not. He's exactly where you were, before the collapse, before the decision, before the rise. And maybe, just maybe, this is the video he needs. Not to be entertained, but to be reminded that he's not the only one rebuilding in silence. By sharing this, by subscribing to this space, you're not just upgrading your own life, you're building a lighthouse for the next man who's lost at sea. Because this isn't a channel, this is a code for men who are tired of being ignored, tired of apologizing for their strength, tired of playing nice while their soul is burning for clarity. So if you found something here, something real, pass it on. Help us build a place where silence isn't weakness. It's a weapon. Where pain isn't the end. It's the forge. Where strength isn't about showing off, but about showing you every damn day. Subscribe not for noise, but for the kind of calm that rebuilds men,